Hello folks, welcome back to Merrill Math. I'm Mr. Merrill, and today's lesson is factoring monic trinomials. So what do I mean by that? Well, it's a lot of big fancy words, basically for trinomials that are sort of in the form of this. You might also know them as quadratics. So the monic part, we think of mono as being 1. So if a lot of you are probably, well, maybe not old enough, but when I was younger, I had a television that was in mono, so it meant it had one speaker. So monic trinomials just means that the leading coefficient is a 1. So we typically don't have anything out in front of there. So we're looking at, a number here and a number here. So for this expression here, we have a plus sign and a plus sign. Those aren't always going to be there. So we could get any combination of signs for those. But the one important thing that we have to remember is our C term, whether it's positive or negative, is going to be our product. So we're looking for numbers that multiply to get that. So we'd be looking for factors. Our B term is going to be our sum. So sometimes it can be a little bit of guess and check. And I know when I was learning to factor trinomials, the teacher that I had, the algebra teacher, sort of taught it as a guess and check method, and I wasn't really a big fan of that. So I try not to teach so much as guess and check, but sometimes with this, you kind of have to have a lot of experience with factors and sums. So it sort of feels like guess and check. We're going to go through a few examples. So our first example we have here is x squared plus 16x is plus 64. We haven't got equations yet, so I was about to say is something else, but we'll get to equations here soon. So what we're looking for is a pair of numbers that will multiply. So we want to multiply to get 64, and we want them to add together, or combine together through a sum to get 16. Now, some of you out there are thinking, oh, I know what it is. That's going to be 8 and 8. 64 has a lot of factors. We could do 16 times 4. Let's see, 1 times 64, 2 times 32, 3 won't go into it, 4 times 16, 5, 6, 7, 8 times 8, and so on. So what we have to do as we're going through this is kind of the guess and check part of it. I've already told you the answer, but just for the sake of going through this, we kind of have to go through, in some situations, when you get numbers that aren't very friendly, or numbers that have a lot of factors, like 72 or 144 or something like that. So when we get numbers that have a lot of factors, we kind of have to go through and see if the sums end up working. Now, another process you could go through is just say, what numbers add up to 16? So 15 plus 1, 14 plus 2, 13 plus 3, and so on, and then see if those multiply to get 64. Again, it feels like guess and check, but once you get more experience with these, you can start to see the relationships between the numbers. So if we check these, 64 plus 1 gives me 65, 32 plus 2 gives me 34, that doesn't work. 16 plus 4 is 20, we're getting closer, and 8 plus 8 is 16. So we found one that works. So we have to have a factored form of this. So when we go to write our factored form, well, our first term is going to be x in both of our factors. So we're going to say x plus 8 times x plus 8. Now, the nice thing is we have two positive signs, and the reason we know that is because, well, our product was positive. So that meant we could have gotten that one of two ways. Positive times a positive is a positive, or a negative times a negative is also a positive. But in this case, this sign tells us that they're both positive. So the sign of our third term tells us, are the signs the same or are they different? And this one tells us what they are or how they compare to each other. We'll get into that a little bit more with a few more examples. So we'll take a look at a second one here. Okay, so this one, we have x squared minus 14x plus 49. Now, as we're looking at this, 49 is a nice number because it doesn't have a whole lot of factors. 1 and 49. And 2, 3, 4, 5, looks like 7 and 7. Those are the only ones I can think of. So as we're looking at this, we say, okay, this is positive, which means that these two numbers, when I multiply them together, had to have the same sign. So they're either going to be positive, positive, or negative, negative. This sign tells us what those are. Now 49 plus 1 is 50, so we know it's not going to be this. 7 plus 7 is 14, but this is a negative 14. So that means both of these had to be negative 7s. So negative 7 times negative 7 is positive 49. If I combine these, negative plus a negative, so the sum of these is going to be a negative 14. So the way we write those factors out, we have an x minus 7 and an x minus 7. So this would be our factored form of this Monic trinomial. Let's take a look at another one. Okay, so we have something here. 42, again, has quite a few factors, but we're looking for factors of 42 that combine to get 13. Okay, so if we start looking at factors, 1 and 42, 2 and looks like 21, 3 and 4, 5, 6, so what is that, 14? 4, 5, 6, and 7. So as we're looking through these, we start looking at the sums. Well, the first thing we have to look at is the signs. These are both positive, so we know that these numbers that we're going to be dealing with are positive. So 42 and 1, that gives me 43. That's too big. 14 plus 3 is 17. That's still too big. We want 13. 6 plus 7 is 13. So when we go to write our factors out here, we have x plus 6 and x plus 7. Not too bad. The next example, and this will be our last one for this video, the next example we're looking at is sort of similar to the last one. We have a 42 here, but there's some interesting stuff going on. So if we have a negative sign, which we haven't actually seen yet, we know that one of our factors has to be positive and the other one has to be negative in order for that to work. So as we're looking at this, we have our factors of 42, 1 and 42, 2 and 21, 3 and 14, and what was the last one? 6 and 7. So as we're looking at these, we're not, technically we are looking at the sum, but the way that I like to think of it is if I have a negative sign here, this number, which is a negative 1, is going to be the distance between the two numbers. So they're 1 apart. So 42 and 1 are 41 apart. That's too far. Those are 19 apart. Those are 11 apart. These are 1 apart. So we know we're dealing with 6 and 7 again. So it's going to be a similar answer to the one that we got on the last question, because we also had a 6 and a 7. But this one is just to illustrate that just changing one sign can change your expression entirely. So for this, we've got a negative 1 as the sum, which means the bigger number, the one with the greater absolute value, I guess, would be the negative 1. So we have x minus 7 and x plus 6. So if we look at that, we have negative 7 plus 6 is a negative 1. Negative 7 times 6 is a negative 42. So hopefully that helped you out a little bit. We're going to have some more videos on factoring here shortly. So thanks for watching.